And also, let's just like call a spade to a certain degree. Like Star Wars has built this amazing legacy, but in those first couple of years, it was still just a goofy sci-fi. Like it wasn't high art. It wasn't serious. It wasn't any of the things that we ascribe to it now.
You're listening to Around the Galaxy.
Welcome to Around the Galaxy, the Star Wars fan talk show. I am your host, Pete Fletzer, and as always, joining me on this journey is my co-pilot, Nick Mielke. Every week, we bring you the stories, the interviews, and the conversations with the people who share our passion and yours for that galaxy far, far away. From the creators and actors to the fans and insiders who make the Star Wars universe feel a little bit more like home. And this week, we are thrilled to have a guest who's about as versatile as they come. He's an actor, he's a comedian, a writer, and a Star Wars superfan, Mr. Paul Scheer. Now, you might know Paul from his hit shows like The League and Black Monday, or maybe you know him from his podcast called How Did This Get Made, where he dives into some of Hollywood's most unforgettable films, which may be unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. But today, Paul is here to talk about all things Star Wars. We're going to dive into what it's like to share the Star Wars galaxy with the next generation, as Paul shares some incredible stories about his introduction of Star Wars to his own kids. He opens up about those special moments of passing on this epic adventure to a new audience and what it's really like to be a Star Wars dad. So if you're a parent or just a fan of sharing the magic, you're really going to connect with this part of the show. And for an exclusive twist, Paul also takes us behind the scenes of a project he worked on called After Darth, a Star Wars parody series packed with comedy gold. It was set to stream before The Force Awakens, and it ultimately was sidelined by Lucasfilm, but Paul gives us a glimpse into what could have been, with plenty of laughs along the way. Plus, he shares a little bit of information about his new book called A Joyful Recollection of Trauma, a dive into his career and life in comedy packed with humor and heart. We'll include a link to his book in the show notes, so please make sure to check that out. But before we get started, I want to remind you to follow us on all your social media channels at the SSW Network. You can follow me at ATGcast, and you can follow Nick at WillsPod. And don't forget to visit the SSWNetwork.com for more information on the show, our hosts, and exclusive Around the Galaxy merch. If you want early access to episodes and exclusive swag and even more perks, consider joining us on Patreon at patreon.com/the SSW Network. You can also leave us a voicemail at 504-321-1501, and you could become part of an upcoming episode. And now, it's time to bring you our conversation with Paul Scheer, so sit back, relax, and enjoy this journey around the galaxy.
We are so excited to welcome Paul Scheer to Around the Galaxy. Paul, welcome.
I am thrilled to be here and excited to just geek out on Star Wars.
You are a huge Star Wars fan. I know that from especially listening to How Did This Get Made. Those kinds of things have popped up over the years, but you have also been involved, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, in Star Wars in a lot of other fun ways. So thank you again for being here to do this.
Yeah, let me tease it and say that I am a part of a Star Wars project that no one will ever see.
I'm glad you teased it that way, because that's a question we have ready to ask about.
All right, great.
That's like the best good news, bad news thing you can ever just sort of set up. The good news is I got to do something cool. The bad news is you don't get to see it. I'm so sorry.
You will never see it.
Well, Paul, maybe let's start by letting people know a little bit about your Star Wars origin story. Like, when did Star Wars become a part of your life, and like any early memories you might have of seeing the saga?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Star Wars has been with me since I was born. I mean, and I know that sounds like a crazy thing, but it was the first movie I ever saw. It was a double drive-in, a double feature at the drive-in. It was The Jerk and Star Wars. And I remember my parents snuck me in to the theater to see, or to the drive-in. I had to have a blanket over me because The Jerk was R-rated, to see Star Wars. And, you know, I was born in 1976. So, that culture of Star Wars was so ever present in my youth. It was the blockbuster. It was the thing that we sat around and we talked about. I remember playing kickball in the school parking lot and talking about, oh, I heard Darth Vader fell into lava, right? That was what we had heard, and this is before anything else, so for me, I didn't collect G.I. Joes. I didn't collect He-Man. I collect Star Wars figures. If I did good on my report card, I could get the Rancor pit monster, like everything was Star Wars, from bed sheets to lunchboxes to Halloween costumes. So that's my background. That's my in. There's no defining moment more than it was all the moments.
I love that comment you made, because we're of a similar age bracket. I'm a little bit older, but that memory that you just sparked in me of like sort of filling in our own blanks, talking about things we heard. I remember after seeing Star Wars, my dad take me. I can still see like the candy shop we were standing in, and my dad was like, "What do you think the Clone Wars were?" And I was like, "I don't know." That sounds so great. But we, like, when we got together with our friends, we'd have lightsaber battles with wrapping paper rolls and whatnot. We were making up our own Star Wars, and that is something that's almost non-existent now, because all the backstory is there.
Look, I think whenever you get to something that is so rich and dense as Star Wars, as far as like the universe, you're always going to have these books. I mean, I grew up, walking down that aisle in like Walden Books, seeing these Star Wars books, these unofficial books of canon, right? Or maybe were they not out yet? I don't know. I feel like there's always like things that were filled in. I remember being so excited when the sequel to Return of the Jedi came out in book form, and you're gonna notice this very quickly. Terrible with names, and but the truth is I'm there. I just don't forget all the names. But like Heir to the Empire, is that what it was called? The first one? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
When that first came out, that was like, oh my gosh. I think whenever you have something that's so beloved like this, you have fans like all of us who want to answer those questions. It's like, I want to tell the stories about the Clone Wars. I want to tell the stories about this because someone said it. For a long time, I can talk about it now. I really wanted to do a series in the Disney Star Wars universe that was really about like an anthology series called Tales from Jabba's Palace, based on that book that I like, this idea of like, we could just do like a story of the week. So I think as a fan, we find these little nooks and crevices that we think, that's interesting. I'd like to explore that. And we go there, and you get these things like Rogue One, or you get, even the Han Solo movie. Obviously, it's a major character, but I think it's fine. Are we going to enjoy everybody's version of it? No, but it's that weird thing of we have ownership over it because we love it. And yet when someone else who also loves it, who's trying to fill in the blank, we just don't love the way that they're doing it. It's a tricky balance. I think you have to, like, the way I kind of think of Star Wars now is I love the restaurant, and I may not love every dish, but I can, respect it, and I'm there. I'm not going to not go to that restaurant, and I think that's the way any fandom that is this expansive has to be.
I want to bring up also from your childhood, and something that is actually so fun. You were featured pretty prominently in the Disturbance in the Force documentary that was put together by Kyle Newman and a bunch of other folks. Kyle's been on the show with us a bunch of times. Great guy. Talk about the holiday special, because one of your things with How Does This Get Made is, bad movies, bad things. Right. But being in that documentary, like, it was such a unique, and the documentary is fantastic. And if anybody listening to this has not seen it, I highly recommend you check it out. But you were in that. Talk about the holiday special. Talk about, what it meant to you seeing it as a kid, but then your desire to be involved in that project.
Yeah, well, so I was, for lack of a better term, a nerdy kid. Went to a lot of Star Trek conventions, and I grew up in New York. So Star Trek conventions came about once a year. It was in New York City at the Penta Hotel or one of these hotels, and you go there. And one of the cool things that they had there, besides a lot of Star Trek memorabilia, and again, we're talking about a time when this is a little bit more novel. It's not like it's a floor of a hotel or some of the conference area. They had these videotapes. And I remember that's when I first got the videotape to the Star Wars Holiday Special, because I had not had any memory of it when it came out. I don't, it was on once and that was it. And I remember the back of the VHS said, if I had a hammer and time, I'd go and destroy every single copy of this, George Lucas. And I was like, I got to get this. And I watched it and it was completely completely bored, honestly. When I first saw it, I was like, this is boring. The Boba Fett cartoon is cool. And I forgot about it. Years later, I rediscovered it. And I had made this documentary for Disney Plus and Marvel. It was kind of about Brute Force, this kind of a failed comic book series that was reverse engineered. It was basically like a toy line first a wannabe toy line that was going to launch through Marvel Books, but they never launched. Long story short, I had made some friends and inroads at Lucasfilm because I edited my documentary at Skywalker Ranch, which was truly one of the best things. And I got into conversations with them about doing a documentary about the Christmas special, the same way that I kind of tackled this one, like having fun with it. And then also paying respect to it. And then at the same time, building a new Star Wars special. And it was going great until radio silence. And the thing I learned very quickly was, I think that Star Wars, or the powers that be in the Star Wars universe, don't like humor and comedy. And it's a very, and you're going to see with me throughout this conversation that comes up a handful of times. They are afraid of it, so I think what they did was they wound up shifting focus to do like a Lego holiday special that kind of Lego is the outlier, right? Lego, they get to do whatever they want in Lego, and that's awesome. And if we don't get to it in a bit, I want to come back to Lego Star Wars too. So I left really downtrodden because I was like, I really felt that I could tell this story of the holiday special, and it was like, sucks that I will never be able to do that. And then here comes Kyle, my friend, great guy, who then tells me I've been working on this. And not only has he been working on it, but what he found. And he kind of showed me some of this research that he had. I just leaned in, so excited to be a part of it because it had become something that I felt like people didn't know the full story. And I think anyone who works in television and film, they know that like it's very hard to make something good. And especially at that time in CBS and trying to make this like special. So I love that he got to do it. I love that I got to talk about it. I learned a lot and just got to show something that you can love and also think something's terrible at the same time.
Absolutely. And I think part of what was so fascinating about that documentary, and I know that you talked about this as well, obviously we all as Star Wars fans talk about, the disavowed, George Lucas disavowing it, never wants to show it again, the quote, like you said. But when you look at what it is and like the conversations about variety shows in the 70s and what, populated that thing, going from the Donnie and Marie, Star Wars bit to what this became, like, to me, that was as fascinating as anything else. Just that inside knowledge of like what TV was and how we're trying, or at that time, like Disney or Star Wars was doing, is like they were trying to keep things going because we didn't know when the next movie was going to come.
And also, let's just like call a spade to a certain degree. Like Star Wars has built this amazing legacy, but in those first couple of years, it was still just a goofy sci-fi. Correct. Like it wasn't, it wasn't high art. It wasn't serious. It wasn't any of the things that we ascribe to it now, so it's a very fitting kind of, it's campy. I mean, Star Wars, the first Star Wars is campy to a certain degree. Sure. Great stuff in it. Like, and I love it. And I'm not here to, but it's like, but yeah, like it's only in retrospect. Like, I don't think anyone in the moment was like, well, this is not the film that I saw. It feels very much like the film. Like it's not great, but it's not so wildly wrong either. You know, it's playing into Diana Ross, it's playing into ELO and all this weird stuff. I mean, the variety show elements are going to make it wonky. But I think they're trying to do something there.
A portion of the fan base has started to take it way too seriously. And I think that we will, first of all, it's kind of this concept that you will never relive that moment when you were 8, 12, 15, 5 years old, when you first saw Star Wars. That's gone. That'll never happen again. It was a magic moment. You got it and you should love it. But when you start to take it too seriously and start to pull away from other people who are having those magic moments with Star Wars, because it doesn't fit your sort of perfect picture of what you think it should be. That's where the challenge is. I mean, I have a 12-year-old son, and his entree to Star Wars was Clone Wars, and that's awesome. He still doesn't have the attention span to sit through A New Hope. It's because it's a 70s movie, right? So it feels completely different. So, but the magic is still coming out in different spots.
Well, Pete, let me blow your, well, I don't know if I'm going to blow your mind, but let me tell you this story, because I've been excited to talk to you because I have 2 sons. I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. Mm-hmm. My 8-year-old currently is obsessed with Star Wars. Obsessed. Mm-hmm. He's going as Boba Fett this Halloween. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you how he got into Star Wars. Through Lego Star Wars, the Skywalker saga. Mm-hmm. He played through that, and he knows all the ins and outs from the Lego Star Wars game.
Yeah.
Right. And then he started playing Battlefront. And now he's like, oh, I want to watch this. I've been obsessed with the game. And he knows all the plot points.
Right.
But it's been done through comedy too. And I'm very proud of myself because as a parent, I didn't try to control the experience. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. I saw him asking me questions about stuff. Wait a second, what about this? What about that? And I'm like, well, yeah, that. And I didn't try to well, you have to watch the movies to enjoy it. It's like, you're enjoying the Lego Star Wars game. If that's your entry point to it, he is obsessed with Star Wars.
Yeah.
But he came in that way. My other son, when I showed it to him, I went the other way, which was I'm going to show him Phantom Menace. And I can go forward. And what I realized with that, and this is like when he was younger, was guess who he loves? Jar Jar Binks.
Jar Jar Binks.
Yep.
Loves Jar Jar Binks. And I was like, and it made me look at that movie completely differently. Yeah. Right. And I think you're right. Like this idea of like, get it how you get it. And I'm watching my kids who have no conception of how they're supposed to consume this thing. It's all encompassing. It's all over the place. And just be excited that they're there. Yeah. And that's and I've read books like, well, this is the way you show it, and this is this, and this is that. I'm gonna show them the way I think. Like they like my oldest son and my youngest son. They can agree that they both like Darth Maul. So instead of trying to show them Clone Wars, I'm going to show them the Darth Maul Clone Wars episode that they want to watch, and it's like a 2-parter or the train robbery one. It's like great, that's what we're gonna watch. Mm-hmm. And I found a relief in that. Like, oh, this is wonderful. Like, all right, great. I don't have to control it. I let them get it, and they'll figure out if they like it or not. Like, no order is going to make it good. No sequence of events or this or that or completionist history is going to make it better for them. They'll find what they want to find, when they want to find it, how they want to find it.
100%. And the other thing that's really cool about that is that, and I'm with you, because the very first episode I ever did for my podcast, I did a pilot episode, and I did it with my daughter, who at the time was 9 years old. And we have the 10 question segment, which we're going to get with you in a little bit.
Can't wait.
But one of the questions used to be, and I took it off because it's such in hindsight, it's a negative question. I used to say, who's your least favorite, Jar Jar Binks, Ewoks, or Porgs? Right? I looked at all 3 trilogies, which was that
right?
That people argued about, and her response was, "Well, that's not fair. I like them all." And I was like, well, damn, I've been looking at this wrong the whole time.
Yeah.
So, super eye-opening.
Well, I was going to ask you, Paul, because we have talked about, the holiday special, which has lots of weird, crazy stuff in it. We've talked about, the stuff that you do with your 2 amazing co-hosts, June and Jason, on How Did This Get Made? If anybody's not listening to that, what are you doing with your life? I've been a fan of that show pretty much since y'all started it. And I love listening to y'all watch bad movies and you talk about them. Yeah. And one of the things that I've noticed as we go throughout it, and a lot of times you'll ask at the end of the episode, each of you will say, would you recommend this or not? But as you're watching these things that are so just terribly bad and awful and silly and whatever they are, a lot of times as you're discussing it, by the end, you're like, it is terrible, but I like it. Like, it becomes endearing. It becomes that thing that, it's just fun. And that's kind of what we're talking about through this whole thing with Star Wars is it's supposed to be fun. Movies are supposed to be fun. What are some other things besides the holiday special and for you in Star Wars that are just kind of so bad that they're fun? What are some other things? Can you put your finger on one or two?
It's funny because I mean, in Star Wars, I really do. I've gotten a different respect for things, like again, watching it through my kids' eyes. I'm on Pete's page where I'm like, I don't necessarily go like, oh, I don't like this. There are things that I feel like as a fan, I'm bummed out about. And I'll tell you, this is where I'm bummed out. I love the idea of Book of Boba Fett. And I thought what they were going to do was going to be very similar to what the Penguin is doing, which is kind of doing like a Sopranos on Tatooine. And I feel like they kind of just rushed it or cheated it. Right. And I was like, I feel like sometimes there's not a confidence in what they're trying to do. And when there is a confidence, you get something that's really exciting. Like Andor is great. Right. Yeah. But it's fully in its own little pocket, right? It's not trying to check a bunch of boxes. One of my biggest regrets, or not my biggest regret, one of my things that I'm most upset about is we'll never see the Phil Lord, Chris Miller Han Solo film, right? These guys have a track record for making great projects, right? Universally just respected, creatively exciting projects. And they get kind of pushed off this movie because it's different. Not what we expected, not what we wanted. Right. And that's a damn shame because, as they go to win their Oscars for Spider-Man, you go like, well, maybe they made a, so I don't know if I have oh, this is lame or this is bad. I really don't look at Star Wars with those eyes. I just don't it's funny because I'm trying to think oh, what could I rip on? And I don't know if I'm sorry to have a lack of an answer for you, but it's I think that So Good It's Bad. And I'm sure I can have people here challenge me that it was great. Is Droids the TV show? I thought Droids the TV show was a real misfire. I think if I went back and watched the Ewok specials, I loved them though as a kid. I haven't rewatched them in forever. It's I feel like I'm all in. I am all in. And that is it's a fun place to be. I think it's better to approach it that way. How did this get made? We talk about bad movies, but we are actors, writers, directors. We love it. We all know how hard it is to make something good. On Unspooled, we talk about great movies, and it's fun just to be a fan. I like being a fan, and I think that obviously there's all this talk of toxic fandom and stuff like that. But the truth is if you don't like the way that something's going, go make your own thing that gets millions of people on board around the world. That's all it is.
No, I think that's right. And I actually think that's a better answer. And we're very positive on this show. We also love Star Wars. And sometimes we try to find that line between, like you even said, you can be critical of something without hating it or being an asshole to somebody. You can just go, yeah, this didn't work for me, or this is the reason why I felt like the show was slow, or
just don't watch it. Resistance. Like Nick and I talk about the Resistance cartoon we don't talk about it all the time because we didn't love it. But that's, we're not we know there are people that absolutely love that show.
That's right.
That's fantastic. It's Ash Crossan, who you've seen on stage at San Diego Comic-Con and Entertainment Tonight, when she was on the show, she said it best. She said, Star Wars is like your baby brother. You rip on them, you give them a hard time, but you still love them, right? And it's that same kind of concept.
Well, I think when you create something that's so massive, you have to just have avenues for not everything to, again, I want to go back. I've never said that before, and now I feel like it was a smart thing to say. The restaurant analogy, right? Mm-hmm. It's I like the restaurant. I just don't like every dish. And that's okay. But we treat it like we have to like every dish. And I think then you get this weird feedback or this thing. It's whether it was, I'm forgetting Leslie Heslin, the name of Leslie. Yeah. Yes. The Acolyte. It's why does this have to appeal to everyone?
Right.
It doesn't. I love the Rebuild the Galaxy. I thought that was so fun, right? And it's like different and cool, and like what a great way to like play in the Star Wars world and also subvert it. And I feel like it's just hard. It's hard when I think that there's such a control behind I'm going to keep on saying the powers that be of Star Wars that they release things one at a time. So you get like this idea of like, well, this is the next chapter, but it's not a next chapter. It's just another thing, but it's viewed as like, well, I have to like this or I don't like this. It's like, no, it's an option there. You know, we pick a car, but we all drive cars, right? Like there's certain things. And I feel like it's, what I think I love about Star Wars, and I think this is what Filoni does. I think this is what, I think this is what George Lucas did. Everybody, like a lot of people across the board, it's, if used effectively, Star Wars is a director-creator medium. What do you want to say, and can you deliver that product? And again, like not to keep on harping on Andor, but Andor and like The Mandalorian both felt like we have the tools, but we can build whatever we want to build. And I feel like that's the mentality that I think is good. Like give creators a chance to build their own little area of the galaxy, and it doesn't have to undercut anything. The one, you know what? Now I'm going back to the one thing that I think I haven't gotten over my disappointment on, and I may have to go back and rewatch it. And I think I'm going to with my 8-year-old. I really, at the grand scheme of things, now this is how far I've come. The one that I'm most disappointed, the one Star Wars thing that I'm like, ugh, I didn't like it at all, is Rise of Skywalker. And I have to rewatch it.
Same, yes.
Okay, yeah, because I'm like, that felt to me on a level cowardly. It just felt like we were, I don't know, it's like we're not a commitment to anything. And to get you this mishmash bundle, there's a bunch of stuff in there. I described it as a movie. I lived in New York City, and on 6th Street in New York City, it's all these Indian restaurants. And you go in there and have the best meals, and always on the TVs are a movie that you've never seen or heard of. And you look at it and you're like, whoa, this looks awesome. And I feel like Rise of Skywalker is that. Like, if you have it on the screen and you're not paying attention to any dialogue or seeing what's going on, like visually, aces, looks cool as hell. But once you turn it on and listen to it, you're like, oh boy. But yeah, that's the one I have not turned around on. I'm curious if I will. I'm a big fan of Rian Johnson's Last Jedi. I know it. Like I saw it before there was any. Like I'm so happy the way I saw it. Saw it on a Thursday night, 8:00 show. There had been no feedback. I saw it with Jason Mantzoukas, and we both walked out. We're like, that was so fun. And then I was like watching the reviews trickle. I was like, wow, wait, what? Like I felt like I was like, because I wasn't even prepared for it not to be received amazingly. So, but I do think that's the thing. It's like, you're trying so hard to get back to like, to make everything fit and work and do all this sort of stuff. And I don't know if people necessarily want that. I think that like, if I could say anything about the new trilogy, and again, you guys might have different opinions of this, I think that, and I'm a big fan of J.J. Abrams, and I watched that first one again just this week, and I was like, oh, this is really fun. And I really like a lot of this. I loved it when I saw it, actually. But he definitely put a lot of things in a box. Like, not in a box. He put a lot of things out there, and I don't know if he had plans for them. And when you're building a trilogy, I think that that's a bad way to go about it. Yeah, Star Wars had the ability of going, look, they have that fight scene between Obi-Wan, the one fight scene that everyone I bet wishes they could retcon, right? The Obi-Wan Kenobi Darth Vader fight scene. Like, we have to back into this in some weird way. We're like, oh, I guess he will never. This is all part of the plan. But when you are creating a trilogy, and I think that that's the thing I read. I remember like Michael Arndt was going to write the trilogy at one point, and then he left, so I feel like that was it was a misfire. Like, they should have built out a trilogy, understood where they were going, and then followed the line. I will say that I read the the guy who did Jurassic World, Colin Trevorrow.
Yep.
Mhm.
I read the comic and I read his script. And I was like, I think I would have preferred that version by a lot.
Mhm.
Like, and it's a shame to say, like, it's a shame to be like, they had that and they went with this. What?
Yeah.
It was so much more fun, or at least it seemed. Look, not perfect, but way better. I think a way better step in the right direction.
Right. But that's the amazing thing about where we are with Star Wars right now. I'm with you, and you're singing on the same song sheet as Nick and I about The Last Jedi. We both love that movie. Rise of Skywalker is my 11th favorite live action Star Wars film. It'd be 12 I could even, if there were 12, I could push it down. But that being said, there's this great, there's so many people that love that movie, and that's your Star Wars restaurant, right? You love the steak, they love the seafood, and it works out for everybody there.
Yeah, and that's why I think my whole thing is I've said this, and I've been doing comedy for a long time, and there's this ability. When I was coming up at a certain point, when I was like when Human Giant was just about hitting, so was like the blue collar comedy guys, right? And people are like, oh, what do you think about the blue collar comedy guys? I'm like, great. They're not taking any of my audience, and they are like, and people are like, well, they're not funny. I'm like, they are. There's an entire stadium full of people that aren't there because they're forced to be there. They're having a good time.
Yep.
And so I can break down on issues of comedy, but like if people think it's funny and it's selling out, like you can't deny that it's working, right?
Sure.
And that's the thing. And it may not be my cup of tea, but that don't have to dictate what my cup of tea is everybody's cup of tea. That's the best part of this. Is like what your favorite movie is different than my favorite movie. And that doesn't mean that either one of us is wrong, but we try to convince each other that we are. Right? It's like, well, you're wrong. It's like, well,
for sure.
But how?
Right.
Why?
Yeah, and that's the problem with the internet and social media is it's the sort of the same attitude that Nick and I kind of take. Like I see people out there saying they love things that I'm like, I don't get it, but I'm not. Why? It's the old why yuck somebody else's yum, right? I mean, I use The Matrix as an example. I love Matrix was one of my favorite movies. 2 and 3 and 4 were kind of unwatchable to me, but I know people love them, defend them, and I'm not going to fight them on them because it's entertainment, right? People may love a show on television or not, and that's okay. And as you just said, there's enough people who do like it that it's making money for studios or whoever needs to make money and is being entertained, and so just run with it. Yeah,
genre is really tricky, right? Because I have this theory where it's like it's very hard to say a drama is bad, right? Like just think about a straight drama movie, right? No, like it's very easy to say a comedy movie not funny, didn't work, bad. Okay, genre movie didn't scare me, not scary, bad, right? Sequels and we're in the Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Matrix. It's so much easier to pick them apart because we love them so much. They're setting our imaginations ablaze. And we all are different people. And so our imaginations get inspired and tickled by different things. So it's like, it's very hard. We can both sit down and have the same experience of loving something. And if we drill down on why we love it, there might be a lot of overlapping things, but there might be some very specific things that we love that, like, again, I go to the Jar Jar Binks example, watching my kids like love Jar Jar Binks. I'm like, God bless them. Like, God bless them. Like, it's like, they're not faking it. They're not like, oh, I like, no, they love it. They love porgs. I love porgs. I love a porg. And it's like, but it's, and I think that what people fail to recognize too is, and this is my big theory on Rian Johnson, is Rian Johnson followed so many things thematically right down the middle, but didn't do them the exact same way. Right. Like there's always a lovable creature in all Star Wars movies. There's always something, whether it's a little probe droids or whatever they are that run around the Death Star, there's always a cute little thing. He puts porgs, right? There's, he's taking all the things. It's like, Yoda literally says, I must go into exile. And when people say Luke would never have run away, it's like, dude, Yoda did it. He did it. Yoda literally did it. George Lucas wrote it's so clunky dialogue as hell. It's like, I must, like, immediately Yoda's like, I'm out. Yoda's figured out his game plan immediately. which is hilarious. Just to articulate it like that. I don't think we needed to underline it, but like just to just he's gonna go. But like that, he's following the pattern. Like, and it's well, I don't like that. I don't like that he would run away. But yet we've built this world where it's like, yeah, we've seen it happen before. Obi-Wan ran away. Yes, and because they were being defeated, but they felt in some way responsible, guilty. That's exactly what he did, but people don't want to see it that way. It boggles I don't know why that boggles my mind so much, but it just bums me out because it's like, I don't know. Yeah. It's like you see it though. The thing that you like, he's doing the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much there and it's so funny. But speaking of funny, and we want to get to this before we get you out of here, we're going to do our 10 question segment in a minute. But before we do, we have to ask about After Darth because it just go ahead and explain what that is and kind of what went on.
So before the New Hope, wait, no, sorry, not New Hope, which is the first, what's the first one called? Force Awakens. Before Force Awakens comes out.
Which is kind of like a New Hope, by the way. A lot of people say.
Yes, yeah. It was so funny. I was watching it last night. I was like, I really can see it now. I watched them almost back to back. So when A New Hope comes out, or about a year before, we get word that the people at Disney are nervous that people don't remember Star Wars. So they want to create some sort of a viral web-based show that will kind of get Star Wars more in the zeitgeist. It was already a flawed concept. It was like people don't forget Star Wars, but they wanted to involve TikTokers and YouTubers and kind of just find a way to like get Star Wars back into the mix. So back in the day when I was at the Upright Citizens Brigade, which is a comedy theater in New York, improv and sketch started by Amy Poehler and Matt Walsh and Ian Roberts and Matt Besser. I did this show called the Darth Vader Talk Show, and it was me as Darth Vader hosting a talk show, and we did it for the premieres of every Star Wars film. Right, we did it every of the prequel trilogy, and it was just like dumb bits, just people coming out. I would be Darth Vader, very traditional talk show host. So when this mandate came down, I was approached like, do you have any ideas on how to package a funny way of doing Star Wars? And I had been approached by Celebration at one point to bring that Darth Vader talk show to Celebration. I was like, I don't know if that fits. I just feel like I don't want to piss off anybody because it was very comedy forward, not Star Wars forward. Right. So I go, well, I did this show called the Darth Vader Talk Show. And they're like, great, we want to do it. And I was like, okay. So they built the throne room from Return of the Jedi, and we put a wooden desk in there, and I had my Darth Vader costume on, and I did a talk show from space, and all of our guests were comedians and YouTubers. Emperor Palpatine was the band leader. He sat in with a bunch of people who looked like they were out of like Max Rebo's band, and I was co-hosting with my brother, who was like a guy in a Hawaiian shirt that had a little bit of a Darth Vader helmet, but not the face mask. And it was just like dumb, funny bits. And because it was under the Disney and the Disney Star Wars mold, we could use any costume, do anything. And we had people come in with bits. We wrote bits, and it was so funny. We did a 30 for 30 about Anakin racing pod racer, the pod racers, and we had like we shot it really beautifully. We did a sketch which was like we were in episode 1, The New Hope, when they're hiding from the stormtroopers in the Millennium Falcon, and everyone blames their farts on Chewie because no one can understand Chewie. Like he keeps on trying to defend himself. We had I introduced Lobot, and Lobot loves to dance, and Lobot just did breakdancing for his entire segment. I brought out like Amidala, and just Amidala's courtesan, like her, and just was asking questions like, "Does she talk about me? What does she say?" So it was like all these like really fun, dumb bits. What's the weather like in Bespin? It's cloudy, and it was just It was done with a lot of love and no, it was never mean spirited, but it was a super fun show. And I guess what had happened was, I'm gonna leave out some names because I don't want to get myself in trouble. Somebody high up in the Star Wars world had heard that we were doing this, and I guess it was not run by them, and went in to the head of Disney and said, "What the F are you doing? Like, we don't know. Star Wars is not funny. Star Wars does not do this." And from what I understand, and I'm talking out, I understand that in that meeting, not only was our show killed, even though we shot all the episodes and they were all edited, so was Darth Vader breakdancing at Disneyland. That was pulled because like he'll never breakdance again. He won't do the Macarena. There'll be no more dancing Darth Vader. Right. And I also heard that the Family Guy DVDs were no more. Like it was a wholesale moment of no. Wow. We are controlling this and we are going forward in a very, we're pushing it out in the right way. And now this is before New Hope comes out. So look, there was an idea of like, let's wrangle the narrative. I understand that from a certain point of view. But that was it. Everything that was like Anakin wholling all those young Jedi students. It was like just coming in, wholesale, just slashing wholesale.
And it's easy to understand that was probably what happened with Detours as well, which was another, similar situation, that comedy, Seth Green, the folks that were involved in that.
And George Lucas.
Yeah.
I mean, right. He was involved. I think it's a bummer because there's something really precious. And I don't think that it should be so precious. Like, I think it's like, again, Star Wars was like this poppy, campy, fun thing that became something big. And look, there's religions around it. People can speak certain languages. They want to understand it. And that's all fine. But again, going back to that creator thing, like you should have a lot of different people painting with that. It's just, look, there are a million different churches in the world. The way that people will preach and tell you the same thing, they're working off the same Bible, but they'll present it in a myriad of different ways. And I feel like that's the best thing in the Marvel world. And that's the best thing in the Star Wars world. When you get a clear, clean voice, making something, it may hit or it may miss, but it won't feel muddled. And when it feels muddled, that's to me the worst Star Wars, where it feels like a lot of fingers in there.
And I not to be too cheesy and quote Princess Leia from A New Hope, but the tighter your grip, the more will slip through your fingers, right? And I think that
100%.
If Star Wars could laugh at itself, I think you would sort of peel off that top layer of people who are taking it too seriously, right? The people who are causing some of the challenges within fandom because they are still like, no, that's not canon, and that's not what I remember from being a kid. But if you can have fun with it, like the Lego shows do, I think that's why me and my son love watching the Lego shows, because they're freaking funny. It's just
we love this world. It's like and I think that's the thing. It's like I think you just have to allow it to be whatever it wants to be. Like, I think canon is the worst thing that could happen to Star Wars in a weird way, right? Like, you can say this is canon, this is not canon, but like now that we have to put everything in a timeline, and having to Marvel too, it becomes too constricting, and it's just like, who cares? We don't need it to all like work out. We don't need to like draw like this happened, then this happened, then this happened. It's like because then it becomes about like forcing a square peg in a round hole. And I think that's some of the exhaustion that we feel too. It's like, oh, right. Yeah, that's what happened. That, like, I mean, again, I'm coming back to, this might be my favorite bad thing of Star Wars. I just said, I was doing a whole riff on this the other day. We meet Emperor Palpatine in I'm forgetting every name of Phantom Menace, right? Ian McDiarmid, right? See him, and immediately we're like, wow, all right, well, let's see how he becomes. So much time must have passed. Again, why aren't they not thinking out this trilogy, right? Why aren't we making him a little bit older at this point, right? But like, so then the second movie, you're like, well, I guess it's not that much time's passed, but he hasn't really aged that much. And then the third time the movie's coming around, like, all right, so I know that they're going to have a baby here. And Luke's about 18, so how did he get that older? And they shoot him in the face with lightning bolts. He's like, I'm old now. Like, this is the dumbest. It's the dumbest. It is the dumbest justification. And again, that was a movie that they knew it was going to be 3. Just make him fucking older. Like, why do we have to shoot him with lightning? It's like the weirdest. Like, it becomes so like that was the dumbest. And that to me is always like, what? Why? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this?
Well, speaking about being right and wrong about Star Wars, we have our 10 question segment here on the show.
Excited.
We've been doing this for a while. You can give long answers, you can give short answers, you can give quick, fast, whatever you want to do. There are no wrong answers.
Okay.
We won't judge you, but the internet, of course, will, for sure.
Of course.
So let me start with question number 1. It's the easiest of all 10 questions, probably. It's, what is your favorite Star Wars movie, TV show, or book?
I think Empire Strikes Back is to me the one that probably taught me the most, right? Because it was the first time in my life as a kid that I had seen the bad guys win. Right? Han Solo's frozen. We end on this depressing note. There were things in that made me feel like, wow, I'm watching like this is wow. Like I'm getting something here. Like, he's his dad. Like it just blew my mind. Like we are living in a time of twists and turns. As a kid, that was all shocking, right? No one's spoiling it for me. Like I didn't know about it. Like now my kids know, like, Luke, I'm your father. They've never even seen Star Wars, right? Like, so that to me just blew my mind as far as like what story could be. So I will always go there as that.
Excellent answer. All right. Who is an actor that you would love to see in Star Wars? Who's a favorite actor you have? Somebody you think would just be a home run in a Star Wars project?
I think. Okay, there are a few that I really like. I don't know why I'm here, but I have 2 I'm going to give you, and they both are similar. Mark Rylance, who I think is a fantastic actor. He's been in a bunch of like Spielberg films. He's a brilliant Broadway actor, just a top-notch A+ stage actor. And I'm thinking like Ed Harris, but I feel like I'm thinking Ed Harris Apollo 13, not Ed Harris now. So like I don't know Ed Harris now. Like I'm like, does he fit still? But Ed Harris would be interesting. But those are 2. I don't know why. Either of them came to my head, but that's it.
I like it.
That's a good one. Ed Harris is just he's just right below that kind of A-list, right? I mean, not that he's not A-list. Yeah. Ed, if you're listening, I apologize, but he would work in a Star Wars. He would. 100%. Yeah. All right. So question number 3 is, if you could own any critter from Star Wars as a pet, which one would you pick?
Oh, wow. I definitely told you my fascination with porgs, and we're critters. So these are not robots. These are purely, look, I'd be lying if I wouldn't want right now on my desk to be a little Salacious Crumb just hanging out, laughing at my jokes, having a good time. I think that every person needs a Salacious Crumb.
That's right. That's the edification we all need, especially as a comedian.
And I know that's his name, so I don't know what species he is, but that species.
Well, I think as a comedian, that just makes sense. Just to have a guy who's always going to laugh no matter what.
Yeah, you need a little sidekick.
But he's gonna tell you it's good and lift you up a little bit.
That's right. It's like a higher pitched Ed McMahon just off to the side, chuckling away. Awesome. All right, our next question, and this is a very basic Star Wars question, but what is your favorite Star Wars sound effect?
Oh, wow. I think that, there are so many great sounds in Star Wars. And again, when I got to be on editing my doc at Luke at Skywalker Ranch, my editor, we were doing our sound there. It's a locked bunch of sound effects you can't access, right? And I think that an R2 beep is pretty stellar. Like it is it brings me those beeps are pretty awesome. And I can think of it and I'm like, oh, I like it. I love the R2 beep.
Yep. It's the text tone on my phone for exactly that reason. I get messages and it just.
Well, back in the day, I had a Tandy computer. I'm dating myself at Radio Shack, and I had a disc where I could have all the Star Wars sounds, like you could associate with everything. It was like my favorite thing. Everything on my computer was that.
Paul, the longer this conversation goes, the more I feel like we were related. I had a Tandy computer.
I love it.
I learned to program on it for some reason. I don't know. Wow. So, related to your R2 beep, though, the next question is, who is your favorite droid?
Oh, that's interesting.
We used to just limit it to R2 and 3PO, but the reality is there's so many different droids to choose from.
The droid that I love is I believe he was played by Alan Tudyk in Solo, right? Oh no. Wait, was that Phoebe Waller-Bridge? Was that droid? Wait.
Phoebe Waller-Bridge was in Solo. Alan Tudyk was in Rogue One.
Oh, Rogue One.
K2.
Yes.
Yep.
I like the Rogue One Alan Tudyk. I love that character. I think that's a really fun droid.
Always have.
Oh, there it is. Yes. That's a good. That is a fun droid. I was gonna say my second favorite one. It was going to be the silver protocol droid in Empire Strikes Back who goes, Ichuta. Like, and he goes, oh, excuse me. Like, I just like the cursing. I like the bad droids. Like, whenever they're hanging out in a bay full of droids, the dickhead droids are the ones I love.
Absolutely. All right. This is going to be the most loaded and controversial question, probably, but it's a good one. What is your favorite non-Star Wars movie?
Oh, I have a few.
And it's not a fair question. We know that.
No, I know. Yeah. And I'm going to go with what I always say to keep it level and say Ghostbusters. Like Ghostbusters to me was a movie that, and look, there are certain movies that I love and I will rewatch a million times. Like I think 2001 is like one of my favorite movies and recently got on that list when I saw it in the theaters. Like, holy shit, like this is blowing my mind. But like Back to the Future and Ghostbusters are two movies that are right in my wheelhouse because they're genre comedy, big heart, but also just really, really funny. And I don't think we make enough of those movies that are high concept and also very accessible. So Ghostbusters to me, my favorite people. I love the idea. I love the world. I love everything.
And what makes Ghostbusters great in my mind as well is similar to where you were going with it, I think, is it encapsulated a time that, I mean, you can go back in time when you watch that movie. No pun intended with Back to the Future, but same thing. It's like it captures a certain principle, a certain way of life somehow. And it's
absolutely.
So yeah. Fantastic. All right, cool. So there's something about Star Wars fans, as you know, we all are collectors in one form or another. Do you have, and what is your favorite Star Wars collectible? It could be something you can buy off a shelf, or it could be something that you just have through your experience.
Oh, I have so many good Star Wars things. I'll list off a couple just that probably aren't my favorites, but they're good. I have a Funko Pop of Yoda from the Macy's Day Parade. So it's it's Amanda. It's a, I'm forgetting his name now.
Right?
Baby Grogu floating up. So everyone's holding on to him with wires. I also have this exclusive from Kmart, the scanning crew from New Hope. So it's the people who are like on the Death Star scanning. So it's boxes and two figures.
I've never seen it. That's wild. That's cool.
That is one of my favorite ones. And then I would say that my favorite toy as a kid was when you had to send away for the Han Solo and Carbonite. That blew my mind. That was truly awesome.
All right, the next one, and I'm gonna throw a caveat in here because I know for fans of our certain age, we tend to have this answer. If you could own any spaceship from the Star Wars universe, but I take the Millennium Falcon off the table,
Yeah.
what is the spaceship that you're picking? Because we would all pick the Millennium Falcon. It's just
best. I mean, look, I think speeder bikes are great looking and they're fun. Seem very dangerous though. You know, there's a basic part of me that feels like, look, I'm like an AT-AT. I'm also the old school, but AT-AT. Like I'm not gonna have room for that. I can't do that. So I mean, I like the Sand Speeder. Sand Speeder is a great, like, oh my gosh, it seems fun. It's perfect. You know, bad trunk space. But I also really like Ray's vehicle in the new movies too. Like, it's like a fun, like kind of very much, it feels like of the Star Wars robot, a little bit different. Didn't get that much play, but I think it's a cool looking vehicle. It's interesting because there's so many interesting ships, but I think I'm gonna stick with Sand Speeder. I think Sand Speeder to me is the way to go.
It's a great choice.
It feels like something you could ride around in LA with too.
I would love it. Yeah, you got top down. It's nice. A little Corvette action. Yeah, it's perfect.
Like an old cassette player in it or something.
Yeah, I love
it. Okay, so we're coming up near the end here, but one of the last questions is, what is your favorite Star Wars moment? And that could be either from the films or something in your life that was Star Wars related that just sticks with you.
You know, it may seem really silly, but the best moment for me has been watching my kids enjoy Star Wars and watching it with my kids. My dad watched it with me. I get to watch it with them. I'm building, I built this Boba Fett costume with my son. And I think that shared experience of like, oh, this is something that was in my life and it's in their life. And it just feels really special. And again, because it's not forced, I'm not making them watch it. I'm not making them be connected to it. I feel really, I don't know, that to me, from when I look on Star Wars now, that took on a whole new meaning for me. Yeah. But if we're talking about a legit moment, it would be waiting online for X amount of hours in front of the Ziegfeld Theater for a screening of Joe Black, the first screening of the day, where they were going to play the Star Wars trailer for The Phantom Menace. Yes. And the theater was packed with nobody who wanted to see me, Joe Black. We all wanted to see the Star Wars trailer. We saw that, then we had to sit through Joe Black, which was terrible, but we only sat through Joe Black because at the end they were going to play the trailer one more time. And the amount of excitement that I had as an adult to go back into that world, and that first trailer is awesome. That first trailer is great. That was probably one of the most exciting experiences I've ever had as a fan.
Well, and here's what makes that answer perfect today, because this week the episode of How Did This Get Made that dropped is a matinee Monday, and it's Lawnmower Man. And in the intro of that episode, you and Jason talk about this exact thing, going to see Joe Black, and you even talk about how to keep people through the movie. They showed the trailer again at the end. That's the episode that dropped.
Oh, look at that. All right. Well, there he goes. It all tied together. Yep. I love that.
It all ties together. It's perfect. All right. Last question. And then I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk about your book for a quick second, because we definitely want to plug that. Our final question is, what is your go-to Star Wars quote? What is the Star Wars line that you use in everyday life, means something special to you? I mean, we all have a bunch of different ones. I tell my kids when I get out of the car, I say, lock the door. And they usually go, and hope they don't have blasters. It's just those little dad moments, little things. That. What is your go-to Star Wars quote?
I think the one that resonates the most for me, not that I say this all the time, but I think about it because I think it's a really beautiful idea, is like, fear leads to anger, and anger leads to hate, and hate leads to the dark side. But I think that is such a beautiful, succinct thing as we approach anything in life. Like, when we fear something, we get angry at it. When we get angry, it turns to we always have to protect ourselves from that. And I think that's like, and when I find myself like hating something, or I find myself afraid to do something, I think about that. And I think that a lot of times when you find people who are creatively blocked or feeling like they're stuck in their life, it's because they're afraid to make a change or change anything, so it's not a fun quote. It's not like, oh, and then we say this and, we run around the house, but it is it's a way of like, look, it's a very beautiful, I think, statement about how to approach life. How do you approach life without fear? And maybe fear is about failure, but there's nothing in Star Wars that, like, it's like you have to try, right? That's the whole thing. You have to try. And that, like, that the Yoda teachings are so beautiful in that way. And I think that, like, I'm so lucky that I was a kid to get them, because it's something that, like, we miss out, I think, a lot of times in philosophy. It's like, it's a great thing to hear as a young kid because it's very basic, but it actually is more true than anything else you can hear.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. This
has been so much fun, Paul. Like I said, this has been an honor to have you on. I've wanted to get to talk to you for a very long time. Before we get you out of here, you work on a million different things. You've got a million different projects, but we do know you have a book that came out just a couple months ago, Joyful Recollections of Trauma.
I do.
Tell everybody about the book.
Yeah.
And I'm ashamed to say I haven't bought a copy yet, but it's very much on my to-do list.
Well, you can get a copy. This is the book right here. It's called Joyful Recollections of Trauma. It's a memoir, right? And I'm a collector. I've been collecting things my entire life. And this is a collection of stories and about kind of being a kid and coming up in a tough situation and having movies and pop culture as like my outlet in those tougher times. And then, and then also becoming a parent and like, and going from a kid who maybe had a tougher time growing up and then dealing with that and figuring out how to become a parent myself. So it's funny. If you've heard How Did This Get Made, it has a lot of funny stories like that in there, but it's got some more weight to it, some serious stuff in there too. And it's not my whole life. It's not my biography. It's just really about a period of time. And you can get it as an ebook, you get it as an audiobook, you get it as a book. And if you want me to sign something in it, you just go to my website and there's a great bookstore I work with in Los Angeles that I will personalize it to whatever you'd like. And it's the same exact price.
Amazing. Yes. That's so great. And I also want to encourage everybody to check out How Did This Get Made, Unspooled. You are, you're the definition of a multi-hyphenate. You do a little bit of everything. And that's why we love seeing you pop up in so many different projects. Thank you again so much for doing this. And we just have really appreciated it.
I loved it. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate you.
Well, that wraps it up for this episode of Around the Galaxy. Thanks to Paul Scheer, and thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to follow us on social media at the SSW Network and visit our website, theSSWNetwork.com, for all things around the galaxy, from info about upcoming shows to exclusive merch. And for our most dedicated fans, head on over to patreon.com/theSSW Network to get early access to episodes, swag, and other amazing perks. Thank you for spending your time with us today, and as always, may the Force be with you. We will see you next time Around the Galaxy. Around the Galaxy is copyright 2024 Pete in the Seat Studios. Our music is brought to us by the band Apollo's Ghost, who can be found on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you find your favorite songs.